2nd and 6 now. End around. John Brown is going to look to pass. Looking for Allen, and he's got it! Touchdown Bills on a trick play to start things off.
1, 2, 3. Go Bills! Go Bills! Go Bills! Go Bills! I was feeling full of gloom. I didn't know what...
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Connor's Untitled Podcast, where if you can't tell by the intro already, today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things in the entire world, the Buffalo freaking Bills. And today's episode is something that I kind of just threw together at the last minute because I was like, I need to get a Bills episode out there. Training camp is about to start. At the time of this recording, it is the day before training camp starts, which is Wednesday, July 28th at 10 a.m., which is when the Buffalo Bills kick off their training camp sessions. Now, with COVID and everything going on with the Bills moving the training camp from St. John Fisher's in Rochester, New York, back to their facility at Buffalo Stadium, which is now Highmark Stadium. There's only like 3 available days that you can go to training camp, which is kind of a bummer, but to me, now that I've grown older, it's lost a little bit of its luster. I remember going, again, St. John Fisher College in Rochester, New York. They would always do open practices, so you could go and watch the team practice, which is great for, people who are older and more invested in the team and things like that. But when I was younger, it was all about going. You could get, Freeze-Waggles hot dog samples, and they had a bunch of cool games and bounce houses and a bunch of sweet stuff like that. But anyway, today's episode on the podcast is going to be bringing you 2 top 5 lists. First one I'm going to talk to you about is the top 5 players on the Bills roster. And obviously these lists are assuming that they make it through training camp. I'm pretty sure all of these players are locks. But you never know. There's always surprise, cuts and trades and stuff like that happens right up until the season starts. So the top 5 players that need to improve / show up. So basically players that, kind of need to make a name for themselves, whether they're fighting for a roster position, or whether their success is detrimental to the team's success. The other list I'm going to bring to you is my top 5 players that I'm most excited to see this season. So that list, I will admit, before I get into it later on, that it is kind of a bunch of mismatch that I've thrown together, but there are a few names that I've left off of the list that I think could be interesting. So anyway, we're going to jump into this top 5 list of players that I think need to improve or show up, and we're going to go off. By the way, full disclosure, I have had a few adult beverages before jumping onto this podcast. So this podcast is inadvertently brought to you by Labatt Blue Light. Not a sponsor. God, no, not a sponsor. But man, they are fueling this podcast. So the first thing I'm going to do is give out my honorable mentions. So I guess you could say this is numbers 6, 7, and 8 outside of the top 5. Levi Wallace being the first one. I think he's obviously good enough to have a roster spot. He's been able to, have some plays over the past couple of years. He's been able to start alongside Trey White. And I think he's good enough to start, on another team. I think he would be a very good addition to them. But obviously we are going for a championship this year. And he needs to step his game up a bit because Dane Jackson is right on his heels, and he is a guy that I would not be upset that if he were to start, because he's definitely shown flashes in previous games that he can play the position. But that is one thing that I'm very excited about in training camp is the cornerback battle to see who's going to start alongside Tre'Davious White. Devin Singletary is another honorable mention. And I'll get to this later on, with Zach Moss. I do believe Zach Moss is the better of the two running backs, even just playing a shortened rookie season that was ended by injury. So I really think Devin Singletary needs to step up this season and earn his spot. And then the other one is Matt Hack. He is the new punter, replacing Corey Bojorquez, or Bojo as I always called him. Corey Bojorquez, look into his stats, was a very underrated top-tier punter in the league last year. I was very sad to see him go. He's the only starter that did not return to the team. So everybody talks big about how the Buccaneers returned all starters, which is very, very impressive in this day and age of NFL. But the Buffalo Bills were able to retain all 21 starters minus their punter. So a bit of a bummer there, but whatever. But on to the actual list. So number 5, and this may be something that shocks folks, but I believe Tremaine Edmunds needs to step up a bit. So I am a huge Matt Milano fan. I was very excited to see that he decided to stay with the Buffalo Bills in the offseason and sign an extension with us. I believe that maybe it's scheme, maybe it is talent, but I believe that Milano is the better of the two. Now, Tremaine Edmunds is, much younger. That was one of his big things when he was drafted into the league, was that he was, only 19 when he got drafted in the first round. But again, he's a first-round draft pick. He has the size, the athleticism, all the potential in the world. The guy is a freak fucking athlete. I just think that he, despite, being a tackling machine, he has led the team in tackles before. I believe that he just needs to, he kind of needs to have more of like a pop. He needs to have more of a highlight reel. Now, I don't believe that he is in trouble at all of losing his roster spot. He's definitely going to be a starter from game 1 through 17, barring injuries, obviously, fingers crossed. But as far as his contract situation, he doesn't have a contract outside of his rookie deal right now. So I think this is going to be a big prove-it year for him. And I really think that he's going to pop because he definitely has the potential to do so. And speaking of guys who have the potential to pop, number 4 is the presumed starting tight end, Dawson Knox. Now, I was not a big fan of him his rookie year. And I was a little bit more of a fan going into last year when he was, a little bit better. He still has a problem with drops, though. He trains with Josh in the off season. He seems very devoted to being a better tight end. He did attend the recent tight end university that was put on by, very top tier tight ends, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Greg Olsen, who has now retired, but has definitely made a name for himself in this league. Amongst other tight ends, they go there, again, trying to craft their, and hone their craft, and get better. So I believe that he will do better this season. I think he has that camaraderie and that chemistry with Josh that he's going to get better. But, I mean, in the heat of the moment, when you got a defender in your face, or even at the line of scrimmage when he's trying to get off, he's just got to have that explosiveness, and he's got to be able to catch the damn ball. That's his biggest thing, and I always see it like I always made a joke, especially last season, which he had a good season. I mean, obviously the team had a good season, so most things pale in comparison. But I always made a joke that you got to throw the ball to Knox early. Let him get his first drop out of the way. Just throw the ball. He's going to fucking drop it. That's just what's going to happen. But after that, he goes off. I mean, he's had that play where he just fucking stiff-armed people. Obviously, you do something freakish. You get compared to the greats, Gronkowski, Kelce, Kittle, things like that. But, I mean, he has the potential. I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Famer or anything. But man, I'm rooting for this guy. And he seems like he's got a good personality. I mean, I don't think I follow him on any social media or anything. I don't really care. But I'm rooting for the guy. He seems like a nice, likable guy, and I mean, he has the potential to just be a freak tight end in this league if he can just get things to click and just get better hands. But again, moving on with the list, number 3, talking about guys that seem like nice, likable guys, probably the most likable guy on the roster. Number 3 on my list of people who need to improve and or show up is Harrison Phillips. Now, he was drafted a few years ago. He seems to kind of taken that mantle of Kyle Williams. Now, I know saying that is big, big shoes to fill, but he is just a great, nice, likable guy. He is somebody that I do follow, at least on Instagram, and he does a lot of work with charities, whether it's in Buffalo or whether it's his hometown. I cannot remember for the life of me right now, but I know it is somewhere down south. He's become very close with Jim Kelly and his family and their foundation, and he just seems like a really, really nice guy. He seems more like a space eater on the field. He doesn't, really come off much as a highlight reel kind of guy. So I just think that, he again is another guy that is on his rookie contract. He was drafted the same year as Josh Allen and Tremaine Edmunds, if I'm correct. And he is, he's a great guy. I think he's a good player. He was out for that one season with injury. So, some people hold that against him. I don't, if it's that early on. It seems to be the only thing that was a nagging injury at this point. So I just really think that if he is, if his team is going to get better, if that defensive line rotation is going to get better, that he is definitely someone that just needs to, pick it up a bit. There's a lot of talks about maybe Starr leaving after this year or the next year just with his contract. Because he does have a rather large contract. He is somebody that, has been in the league for a while. He can definitely teach Harrison, to be that space filler. And a lot of people don't like Starr's style, but you can kind of tell when he's not there. I mean, last year when he opted out with COVID, our run defense suffered, and I believe that it was in part due to Starr's absence. I don't think it was that completely. Obviously, there's scheme to it, and I believe that at least what I have seen in McDermott's defenses is that the secondaries, like the linebackers and backs, are deadly, and the front four, unless you have a freak athlete on the front, is kind of, I don't want to say an afterthought, but it comes second to the secondary. So it seems like more. And the Bills have a great pass defense, in my opinion. But either way, if you're looking at the McDermott defense, at least with the Buffalo Bills, maybe it has to do with talent, maybe it has to do with scheme, but the secondary has definitely outperformed the front four, again, in the time that McDermott has been the coach. So who knows if that's a coincidence, whether it's talent or scheme, who fucking cares? So, moving along on the list, we're going to stick with another defensive player. This is a first rounder from a couple years ago, a man that I was very excited to have drafted. I watched this draft with my brother, and we were calling it the day of. We were like, we're going to go out and we're going to draft Ed Oliver. So number 2 on my list of top 5 players who need to improve and or show up is Ed Oliver. And the reason I say that is just because he came in with such high expectations. Not his fault, but there were a lot of comparisons with him and Aaron Donald. Now, Aaron Donald is arguably the best interior defensive lineman to ever play the game of NFL football. And I humbly believe that. He is just a freak athlete. He plays interior line and gets numbers like a defensive end. If you throw him on the defensive end, it's game over. So he came in with those similarities. He's athletic. He's not really big. He's not a space eater kind of guy that you find on the interior line like Starr or Harrison or Kyle Williams or something like that. He's, somebody who you would look at and think, oh, you're probably an edge rusher, but he plays inside. I believe that the return of Starr is definitely going to help his game a lot more. It's going to take some more pressure off of him. And I think that he had a very rough start to his rookie season, but he picked up a little bit more towards the end. He definitely has the potential. I mean, the athleticism is there. If you've watched any of his college tape, if you've watched any of his NFL highlights, I mean, the guy makes plays. But I think that, again, with the lack of star last year, the defensive line was just kind of rough. I mean, that, in my opinion, outside of the running game, that may have been one of the weaker spots of the team last year. My opinion, I may be wrong. Who knows? But obviously they addressed it with the draft and drafting, their first 2 picks being rookie pass rushers. So I think I might be onto something. But the play of Ed Oliver is going to be key to the defensive line's performance. So obviously we're assuming that at the day one starters, as long as things, move forward as expected in camp, you're going to have Jerry Hughes, and Mario Addison as your edge rushers. And then you're going to have Star Lotulelei and Ed Oliver on the inside. And then you'll be rotating because you want to keep a fresh defensive line. So you'll get the rookies in there. You'll get Trent Murphy if he ends up sticking around with the team. And then you'll mix in people like Harrison Phillips, and I think Vernon Butler's still on the team. But either way, Ed Oliver being that starter is going to be key because he's going to be that athletic one who, outside of your defensive ends, is able to disrupt the offensive line on the other team and ultimately the quarterback. So that brings me to number 1. And number 1 to me, again, is somebody who's expected to be a starter, but their play is going to be detrimental to the team's success. This was somebody who, again, was a second-round draft pick, actually, but somebody that I was excited to have fall so far and have the Bills pick up, and that was Cody Ford. Cody Ford is an offensive lineman this year. Again, if things play out correctly in camp, is expected to start at left guard on the offensive line alongside Deion Dawkins, the Snowman, and Mitch Morse, who's our center. So now Cody Ford last season was cycling snaps with Ty and Secchi between right guard and right tackle, primarily right guard, when Feliciano was injured. And then there was, before, Darrell Williams ended up solidifying himself. So again, if things play out the way that they're supposed to in camp, left to right, your offensive line is supposed to be Deion Dawkins, Cody Ford, Mitch Morse at center, John Feliciano at the guard, and Darrell Williams at right tackle, which is pretty tight from what it was last season. I believe, and most people who watch football will tell you the same, that one of the biggest things with the offensive line is continuity. Knowing the person next to you, your communication, knowing what they do in what situation and things like that. Continuity is key. You'll hear that phrase from anybody who talks football, at least in my opinion. I mean, the offensive line is one of the most underlooked, underrated positions on the football field. It's something that I honestly don't pay too much attention. I try to. Left tackle is a huge position. I mean, left tackle is a big moneymaker now because you're protecting multi-million-dollar quarterbacks. So it is something that is underlooked and underappreciated, but I believe Cody Ford has, again, the potential, the athleticism, and the ability to play a great left guard, and he definitely has a solid left tackle in Deion Dawkins to assist him on that sides. But, you're going to be in charge of partially protecting Josh Allen's blind side, so if you fuck up, Josh Allen fucks up, and the team fucks up, and nobody likes it when the Buffalo Bills fuck up, except for those losers in the AFC East that aren't the Buffalo Bills. But anyway, so to recap, from 5 to 1, my top 5 of players who need to improve and or show up this season. Tremaine Edmunds at 5, Dawson Knox at 4, Harrison Phillips at 3, Ed Oliver at 2, and Cody Ford being number 1, with honorable mentions of Levi Wallace, Devin Singletary, and Matt Hack, our new punter. So now before I go into this top 5, I just want to take a minute to appreciate those of you who have listened to my previous episodes. The reception that I got on the first 2 episodes that I put out was more than I could have asked for. Those of you who have, told others about it or shared it or, just taking the time to reach out and say that you appreciate it, I appreciate you. So thank you so much. It was very nice to hear your kind words. Definitely something that is leading me to continue doing this. And I hope that you are enjoying what I'm doing. So again, I'm always open to comments, criticism, anything you'd like, because this is just as much for me as it is for you, because I want something that you folks enjoy listening to, enjoy looking forward to, despite the unprofessionalism in some instances, but who knows. We'll get through this, and again, I really appreciate it.
The Bills make me wanna.
So this next list is going to be my top 5 players that I am most excited to see in this upcoming season. Now again, top 5 lists seem to be the thing, so we're just going to continue on with the lists. So again, this one is my list, players that I am most excited to see. There are a couple of groupings in here, so if you don't count that, whatever. But anyway, number 5, Matt Milano. I mentioned him earlier, alongside Tremaine Edmunds. He is one of the starting linebackers for our defense, and I believe, in my opinion, the best linebacker on our defense. The guy is just an absolute ball hawk. He's all over the field. He knows where the ball is at all times. He's made interceptions. He's made sacks. He disrupts the line of scrimmage at times. He can disrupt wide receivers at times. He just does it all. And he seems to be, not necessarily the guy who is quarterbacking the defense. A lot of those responsibilities do fall on Tremaine. But Matt Milano is just a animalistic freak. I mean, he is so fun to watch. So he did sign a deal in the offseason for, I believe, 4 years. So he's going to be around for a bit, and keeping him in that McDermott offense, as I mentioned, the linebackers and the defensive backs definitely benefit from his schemes and his mindset. So he is around for a while, and I am here for it. So yeah, number 5, Matt Milano. Moving on to number 4, this is the first of my 2 combos that I have. And this is our 2 second-year wide receivers, Gabriel Davis and Isaiah Hodgins. Now, Gabriel Davis, you're probably more familiar with. He was the rookie wide receiver who inevitably ended up taking John Brown's job. Now, Smokey Brown, we love you. We appreciate everything that you did for us. You're a hell of a receiver, and we wish you the best of luck in the future. At least I do. In every single game that you play, except if you inevitably come back around and play Buffalo. I got to root against you, but either way, hell of a guy. Thank you for what you did for the Buffalo Bills. But Gabriel Davis, young blood, fresh blood, get him in the building, ends up popping off. This guy has feet on the perimeter like a seasoned veteran. He's got so many highlights just from his rookie season that makes me so excited for him to, go into the second year knowing how the NFL plays, knowing, the tendencies of defensive backs on the other teams, and obviously having that rapport with Josh Allen. He's going to go in on the roster as the number 3 receiver. Well, actually, no, because Emmanuel Sanders is in there. So he's probably going to end up cycling in and doing a little bit of what he did last year, but he's definitely made a name for himself. The other one on this number 4 spot is Isaiah Hodgins, and he was drafted, again, in the same class as Gabriel Davis, but he was sidelined all year with an injury. He is hoping to come back, obviously win a roster spot against a very loaded wide receiver core. And he's got the potential. He's trained in the off season. He's made his way back and gotten himself back into football shape so that he can, again, fight for this roster spot. But he's a question mark at this point. I mean, we haven't really seen him play much NFL football, if any. And, you know, having the pop that Gabriel Davis had, and then the addition of Emmanuel Sanders. They also drafted another receiver this year. And, you know, they bring people in during camp. So he's got an uphill battle against him. But if he makes the roster, it'll be very interesting because, you know, he was drafted. The team does obviously think very highly of him, so they're going to give him a shot, and you know we're excited to see if this opportunity is going to come around. So if I had to pick one out of the two, I would definitely say Gabriel Davis, but that's just because we've seen what he can do, and it's been exciting, it's been tremendous. But you know, Hodgins is a wild card amongst other things, and that's what we're going to find out in training camp. So, and that moves us on to probably another, I wouldn't say a position battle, but definitely an area of interest in the offense, and that's the running back room. So my number 3 player that I'm most excited to see is Zach Moss. Now, I'm going to say something that may come across as controversial. It may come across as something you agree with. But if we're looking at Zach Moss versus Devin Singletary, I'm taking Zach Moss probably 9 out of 10 times. I think he's more built for a running back. Maybe doesn't have as much agility as Devin Singletary. Singletary, in my opinion, I don't know if he came into the league like that because I didn't watch much college ball. But he seemed to learn his elusiveness from Shady because that guy is very slippery. But Moss, he can kind of put his head down, run into defenders. He just seems like a very old school banging running back, and I like that. I mean, I like both kinds of running backs, but I feel like, again, with another year under his belt, more camaraderie, more chemistry with Josh Allen and the offensive line, that he's going to come together, and I think he's going to end up being running back number 1 coming out of training camp. But that's me more rooting for him. Also hoping that, you know, Singletary can prove me wrong because I really liked Singletary in his rookie year when he was playing alongside Frank Gore. You know, everybody was like, yeah, we love Frank Gore. He's a great guy, but, you know, give the rookie the ball because, you know, he's a baller and he played well. I think he regressed a little bit in his sophomore year, but, you know, we'll see how that plays out for him in year 3 and Zach Moss with year 2. But again, I'm very, very excited to see Zach Moss and, you know, how he's going to come back off that injury. And, you know, maybe he's going to prove me wrong. You know, maybe I'm just, you know, pumping myself full of fucking smoke and, you know, he could, you know, just not come back, but I don't see it. So I truly believe that he's going to come back and win the starting running back role, with obviously him and Singletary sharing snaps. Number 2 is the second one of my groups, and this is just the pass rushers in general. I think it's going to be probably alongside cornerback the biggest area of competition in training camp. You've got guys who are seasoned veterans and, again, presumed starters. Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, Trent Murphy doing cycles in. And then you've got the rookies coming in, you know, Boogie Basham and Gregory Rousseau. They're just going to be, you know, a good amount of competition there. It's something that, again, people have said has been a weakness in the offseason and going into last year. And a lot of reasons that people thought, or one of the reasons, that people thought we lost that AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs was that we just couldn't inflict enough pressure on Patrick Mahomes. So I guess all in all, you could say that number 2 would be the defensive line as a whole, because as I mentioned earlier with Ed Oliver and Harrison Phillips, that they're guys who, you know, their play, and Harrison being, you know, a fill-in player, he's kind of a cycle. I can't remember what the hell they call it, but he's a guy who kind of cycles in. You know, their play is going to be detrimental to the success of the defense and in a whole sense, the team. But, you know, the pass rushers are the ones who make the sacks, the flashy plays, and, you know, disrupt the quarterback. And Jerry Hughes, you know, I want to take a moment and just appreciate Jerry Hughes because he came over from the Miami Dolphins on a trade years and years ago. and has really, really established himself as, maybe not a Hall of Famer, maybe not even a Bills Wall of Famer. But he is definitely one of those fan favorites, kind of Bills legends that, you're always going to know, look up to, and just love. The Fred Jacksons, the Kyle Williams, the Doug Flutys, all those guys that have just been on the Bills that you just love to rally around. And, they're a good heart. They're a good guy in the locker room. They're a good enough player on the field. Again, they may not be a Hall of Famer, but they're somebody that, as a diehard Bills fan, you're going to look back on and be like, damn, like, remember when Jerry Hughes, was playing and, he's getting sacks. He had that pick six against I think it was the Broncos. He's just going to be one of those guys that when he retires, you're all going to be clamoring, oh, you got to retire as a Bill. You got to retire in Buffalo. And I truly think he will. I think it's a place that we've really wrapped our arms around Jerry Hughes. And kind of accepted him as one of our own, especially coming from the enemy down in Miami. I just really think he's a great guy, and we just need to take a minute to appreciate him. Now, before I get to my number one, who I'm sure you all can guess, I want to get to some honorable mentions, and I'm sure you're like, what the fuck? There's like, we're on number one, and there's all these players that you haven't mentioned. And I think the biggest one that tops my honorable mentions are Diggs and Beasley, Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley. And the reason I didn't put them on the list is we know what they're capable of. Now, I could very have well put Beasley on this list because Beasley's coming off an injury, was just shy of 1,000 yards in the regular season. They sat him for that game going into the playoffs. He played the playoffs. With a whole bunch of leg damage. The guy is an animal. And say what you want about what he's been going on in the media lately with his vaccination status. Keep that separate from everything. The guy is an absolute baller on the field. One of the best slot receivers, at least currently in the league, maybe in the history if you want to really get into that argument. But he's got a fucking flow for days. The dude's missing a tooth. He's got a hockey smile. He's a family man. He's got a wife and kids, and he just goes out and balls. So, yes, I am excited to see Beasley and Stephon Diggs. But the thing is, we know what both of them can do. Diggs is a goddamn animal. Last year, he probably would have been my number one on the list if I were to make this list up this time last year, because coming out of Minnesota, having, Kirk Cousins and Case Keenum and Sam Bradford as his quarterbacks, we didn't really know what to expect from him. He was consistent, but, Josh Allen was still growing, and he was still young and figuring things out, and their chemistry clicked almost immediately. But, yeah, he would have been number one last year. Now that him and Josh are boys, and he was, arguably the best receiver in football last year, you could argue outside of Devontae Adams, we know what they're going to do. So I am excited to see those two guys, but it's not something that I'm concerned about. These ones here that I put on my list, there's a little bit of concern behind each of them. So Milano just got the contract status. Is he going to get soft? Gabe Davis, is he going to repeat? Isaiah Hodgins, is he going to be worth the draft pick? Zach Moss, is he going to come back from the injury? Or is, Singletary going to take over? The pass rushers, probably one of the biggest question marks on the entire team. So I don't have any question marks about Stephon Diggs or Cole Beasley. They are both guys that are going to go out and perform, and I have no worries outside of injury. Another honorable mention would be, I guess, any member of the secondary, primarily Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, and Tre'Davious White. Now, those three guys combined are, in my opinion, a top three secondary. So if you want to take three defensive backs on any team, whether it's two corners and a safety, two safeties and a corner, whatever you want to do, I think you can definitely stack Trey White, Jordan Poyer, and Micah Hyde up there with the best of them. So everybody's going to talk about the DeAndre Hopkins catch against the Cardinals game last year. That ended up sealing it, which is total goddamn bullshit. But it's a highlight reel catch and good for DeAndre Hopkins. Like I mentioned earlier, the front four does not do enough of getting after the quarterback. Kyler Murray was able to have the time, throw the ball up, DeAndre Hopkins had the time to go all the way downfield and catch it. Now, all game, they were, playing against DeAndre Hopkins, a top 3 receiver in the game, top number 1 to most people. You've got these guys going out there against the best of the best, and the Cliff Kingsbury offense with the Arizona Cardinals is very fast-paced, very run and gun. So, I don't want to say I'm making any excuses or anything, but they could be tired. They maybe didn't have all their oomph in them to go get that catch. But either way, I don't really have any questions about those guys in the secondary outside of, Levi Wallace. But Trey White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, all guys that I'm very confident about going into the season. And then one that I just wanted to put out there, just because these two gentlemen have done so much for this organization in the past 5 years that I could never be more thankful for as a Buffalo Bills fan since I was born, essentially. Having lived through the drought, Doug Flutie was my quarterback growing up, and then I hated Rob Johnson. And after that, I kind of just fell off with the Bills. I still followed them, but I just didn't really care as much. So having Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott do what they have done in the past 5 years or so is just tremendous. Primarily Sean McDermott. I mean, he's really come in and instilled the culture that the Buffalo Bills has grown into nowadays. And Brandon Beane has really just come in and managed the money and applied the players to Sean McDermott's plan. So those two, a.k.a. McBean, is a hell of a combo, and I'm very excited to see that they have both, signed extensions. They're here for years to come. They have a great relationship with the owners in the Pagulas, and the city of Buffalo loves what they've done and are continuing to do. So, Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, very glad that they're here. Very glad that they're here to stay, and that they're continuing to, build and bring a championship, hopefully, to the city of Buffalo. So that's going to bring me on to my number 1, who should be, if anybody makes a top 5 most excited list, I feel like this guy should very well at least be in your top 2. And that's the man of the fucking hour. That's Josh goddamn motherfucking Allen. I mean, come on. JA-17, baby. This guy had a near MVP caliber season. He did have an MVP caliber season. It's just that fucking Aaron Rodgers had to go out there and throw a couple more touchdowns and a little less picks. Now, that's the whole thing with Josh Allen. Everybody's like, oh, he throws too many interceptions. He's careless with the football. You realize that every single year he's been in the fucking NFL, that he continues to get better. There's nobody, at least that I can think of, that has shown that amount of progression from year 1 to 2, and especially 2 to 3, with that Josh Allen has shown. The guy is tremendous. Now I'm sitting here and you guys are like, oh, here we go. Connor's going to ride Josh Allen's dick. But you know what? I've had to put up with motherfuckers riding Tom Brady's dick for the past 20 fucking years. So shut the hell up. All right? Guy is gone. He's in Tampa Bay now, and I actually kind of like him. But either way, I'm talking about right now the best quarterback in the AFC East in Joshua Patrick Allen. The guy is destined to win at least an MVP in his future. And hopefully, for the love of God, please bring a fucking Super Bowl to the city of Buffalo. So, Josh Allen is the number 1 guy on the Bills. He is the number 1 person that you come to see and buy tickets for. You buy the jersey of. He's the one that everything revolves around. So, he is obviously the number 1 for me on this list. Definitely a guy that, I feel like is just only going to get better. His trajectory has only gone up. Having all these pieces come back on the offensive line, having all these pieces on the offense, weapons, Diggs, Beasley, Davis, adding Emmanuel Sanders, a seasoned veteran. The defense has improved. I mean, this is a Super Bowl caliber team all around. There are a few question marks. There are a few things that need to get hammered out in training camp. And then obviously we need to get this whole vaccination shit figured out so that it doesn't divide the team. But either way, I am so fucking excited going into this season. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to make a lot of noise. They did so last year. And I think they're going to be back to prove that it wasn't a fluke. A lot of people were saying that, they get all the way to the AFC Championship and they get throttled by the Chiefs. And, it's a fluke. They blew out teams lesser than them and, ended up winning easy games. No. The Bills went into Gillette Stadium prime time, and they whooped the fucking Patriots. They were up in the end of the third, early fourth quarter, like 31-9. And Josh Allen's reaching for the fucking smelling salts because he knows he's going to step on their throats, all right? So, yes, they were a lesser team last year, but that's still an environment that you go into and struggle. So, I really believe that the Bills are going to come out. Maybe it's recency bias. Maybe it's just me being a huge fan. But they're going to come out and they're going to shock people. I think they're going to make a fucking bang in the regular season. And I think that they're going to come out, make a deep playoff run, and ultimately be a Super Bowl favorite. I think we're going to get a repeat AFC Championship game between Buffalo and Kansas City. Shout out, by the way, I'm going to that game in October. Fucking coming for you, Arrowhead Stadium. I can't wait to drink your beer and eat your barbecue and shout at your fucking team because Josh Allen's going to dangle dick on you all night.
Give me a hell yeah!
But either way, I think we're going to get a repeat AFC Championship game. Bills, Chiefs, I think it's going to go the opposite direction. I think it's going to be close. Probably get like a 24-27 type shit. Bills advance, go to the Super Bowl. I think it would be poetic if Tom Brady was there again, and then they just fucking smack him and bring that Lombardi back to Buffalo.
I said give me a hell yeah!
So anyway, folks, I really hope you appreciate my first edition, second edition. I know I did one previously when I ran the Cup, but now I'm doing things a little more seriously. So I hope you guys enjoyed my edition of the Bills. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to call these segments. I'm kind of getting around the name I'm Bumblin Billshit or Bullshitting with the Bills. So if you guys got any suggestions, let me know. So just as a quick recap, top 5 players that need to improve. Number 5 is Tremaine Edmunds. Number 4, Dawson Knox. Number 3, Harrison Phillips. Number 2, Ed Oliver. And number 1, Cody Ford. And then on to the top 5 players that I am most excited to see going into this season. You've got number 5 with Matt Milano. Number 4 is a combination of Gabriel Davis and Isaiah Hodgins. Number 3 is Mr. Zach Moss, returning from injury. Number 2 is a collection of our pass rushers and defensive ends. And number 1 is the man himself, future NFL MVP, Joshua Patrick Allen. Thank you so much for listening to Connor's Untitled Podcast. We will catch you on the next episode.
For the kickoff on opening day. Go Bills. Give me a football game. Go Bills. Sunday's opening day. Go Bills. Bills gonna blow 'em away. Go Bills.
Thank you for listening to Connor's Untitled Podcast. The music for this episode was provided by Oldies 104 1991 Bills Boogie series of parody songs released on cassette tape for their local radio station. Thank you so much, and we'll see you this season. Go Bills!
Go Bills. Go Bills.